now?
Bilan garam, Nayu Mama, Yirrilam Gooraminya, Nayu Nalan, Jiggle, Sovereign Indigenous Government, Yirrilam. I'd just like to say welcome to the presentation. My name is Yirrilam Gooraminya, and I am the Acting Minister for Education for the Sovereign Indigenous Government. How are you doing this morning? We've got a few slides for you, so we'll get into that. First up, the Education Department of the Sovereign Indigenous Government is excited to announce for the first time the embedding of a recognised Australian curriculum into the Yidinji cultural perspectives. This elevation in education is expected to enhance the education of all children to new heights and place Yidinji and Australia as the leading lights in education globally. Just a quick overview of what we're going to go through today. Obviously the introduction, a bit of the curriculum overview and the opportunities that are going to arise from that. And at the end we'll have the links to the expression of interest, anybody who wants to receive that information through, and also answer any questions that come through. So commencing in 2022, so commencing in January next year, the inaugural primary school on the Yidinji territory will be chosen, and have the opportunity in that school to experience first-hand contemporary learning embedded in the depths of Yidinji perspectives and ways of being. Ways of being, by that I mean knowledge, wisdom, art, morality, from prep through to 6, so starting in all grades in one class in each grade, through the framework of the Yidinji National Curriculum. The Yidinji National Curriculum will commence 7 class groups in 2022, as I said, and it'll double each year laterally into other primary schools throughout the territory, and each year thereafter, and subsequently within high schools from the following year onwards. So from the perspective of the cultural immersion curriculum, we have 2 aspects. What the foundation is, the roots, what is really is not seen, what sits behind it, and also the fruits of that foundation. So to find a curriculum that was capable of being embedded within Yidinji perspectives, the criteria that we went through where we looked at a curriculum that had sufficient degree of alignment that it will be able to embed within Yidinji cultural perspectives. So that was one of the first and key points, is that it aligned, the curriculum we're going to use and embed in Yidinji cultural perspectives will align with it. And the curriculum that we have chosen to use had to demonstrate the highest number of connection points to Yidinji cultural ways of being and knowing. With the thought in mind of making this connection throughout the school, not just within the cultural curriculum, cultural immersion curriculum, we looked at and chosen a curriculum that is translatable into the existing syllabuses within Australia. So, for example, CARA, so the greatest external sharing could be established. And the 4th aspect that we looked at in choosing a curriculum was that it reflected Yidinji cultural and education core values and practices. So that's both traditionally and contemporary. So when we look at some of the foundation, the roots of the cultural immersion curriculum, the 7 that sort of have been decided upon, and one of the most important ones was the recognition of the children themselves, what they are, and the sense of unfolding spirits before us. So one of the core insights that is that each child is a threefold being of body, soul, and spirit. This is a key component and insight, and the cultural immersion education seeks to enliven the life in each child of the feeling, the thinking, as well as the physical, social, artistic and spiritual capacities. Another one of the aspects, and this is probably more so Yidinji perspectives being brought into the contemporary world, is looking at social renewal. The cultural immersion curriculum promotes a spirit of universal endeavour and cooperation among all nations, cultures and identity groups. So that is just that's a statement outlining realistically cultural ways of being. That's how it has always been on Yidinji territory, and that's how it's going to continue within the education system. The schools will also strive to develop each individual's potential as a resilient and ethical human being who cares for the country around them, the environment, and has a reverence for all life. And once again, these are statements of Yidinji ways of knowing and being. Students will also learn from life and able to contribute to a world ethos upholding cultural diversity, equality of rights and economic stability, sustainability. So this is very much bringing the traditional perspectives into the modern world. So that one's the social renewal. Third one, cultural insights. It's really the cultural immersion schools will work with three developmental phases. From an understanding that each child is, a physical, soul and spiritual aspects that progressively integrate. This will be done through direct experience, and so that will inform the concepts, particularly as a part of the approach to scientific study versus simply discussion or textbook usage. Even though that can be part of the process, it's much more for each child about the direct experience in the natural world. Teachers will be able to give an overview of the whole and then move to the parts. This is one of the key components and traditional ways of approaching any learning, is the understanding the whole of whatever's being taught and then exploring it from there. Early childhood teachers will be enacting play-based learning. The class teachers extend learning artistically and imaginatively, and the secondary teachers will cultivate aesthetic and ethical discernment. Goodness, beauty and truth, these are the ideals that are embedded in the education and focus on development of healthy life habits. The main lesson structure will be employed over several weeks to facilitate deep learning. So every child in the class, each and every child will have the opportunity to be at the same point when the learning has been completed. Observation is a key foundation for assessment, and through not just Yidinji but many and most Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures throughout Australia, the observation is one of the key focuses when learning. And of course, being in nature, using natural materials, these will be valued experiences within the cultural immersion curriculum. The fourth root or foundation is the freedom to teach. The cultural immersion teachers will work collaboratively to develop and refine and review the delivery of the educational program as insights of the pedagogy are purposely adapted to time and place. So this is probably one of the key parts of reversing the current trend within many schools where the traditional cultures are attempted to be embedded within the school practices. This national curriculum being introduced into the Yidinji nation will be the reverse of that. The curriculum will be embedded within Yidinji traditional perspectives, and so this is where time and place will be a very big part of that. individual teachers will work perceptively and creatively with the curriculum, the pedagogy and assessment, so having the freedom, each teacher, to do that, and the teachers' ability to reflect their freedom, that freedom that is given within the cultural immersion curriculum to each student, and the class as a whole will make a massive impact on how the children perceive and receive the learning. Relationships, and so many times I've heard this from so many teachers, that there isn't enough time, and the Yidinji National Curriculum it will be centred and founded on this core value that the teacher's task will be to develop a deep interest in the children, their colleagues, the school community and the world. These enduring relationships between students and teachers and among the students themselves are at the heart of the cultural immersion education. So these relationships deepen and stabilise when they are cultivated over multiple years. The next, and one of the most important areas as well, will be professional growth. So the school staff will cultivate their professional learning, including the teachers' personal and spiritual development, drawing on traditional Yidinji and other relevant contemporary studies and research. This collaboration will extend to professional learning among teachers and staff from all schools as the Yidinji curriculum expands out throughout the Yidinji territory. And last but not least is shared responsibility. The cultural immersion will cultivate within schools shared traditional Yidinji and contemporary understanding of organisation and principles for guiding the school. So it will introduce a different way of seeing and understanding the decision-making processes and how they should be carried out and applied. With, of course, from the Yidinji perspective, the education is a cultural endeavour and not an economic nor an administrative. All right, we'll move on to the next slide. And we've got an example of these cultural perspectives that we've been discussing that sit as a foundation or as the roots of this tree to make it healthy and to deliver the fruits that we want to see within our children. And it's really about the starting with the teacher. So what's not observable is aspects of the teachers, who the teachers are as human beings. So, the capability of the teacher is not about what they know, but who they are. Worthy role models is really what we want to have on with our children and guiding our children. And in doing that, they have to have the ability to be always developing themselves from within. So often within schools, words are looked at, and a couple of examples we have on this slide is up the top there, responsibility and tolerance, and so much can be done with a word that can be spelt and can be discussed, read about, analysed, written, looked at the syntax, given examples used in sentences, and yet these two words that I've chosen here on this one is actually what we're looking at in the foundation. So what is not observable within the teaching, developing the ability to respond with temperance. And as so many teachers would have experienced through their teaching career, the children will certainly challenge you, but look to you for what response you bring, no matter what they're doing. And as many people experience with like teachers or everyone within us, if you're looking at self-development, you might have been fortunate enough to have it modelled to you, proper and correct responses, ways of responding by someone who was revered by you. You might have taken that on yourself. You might have looked to change and improve something within yourself, and failed, or attempted it again and then caught yourself and then actually corrected it and delivered these experiences. So as you grow as a teacher, all of these processes are always part of your living, your being, your knowing. And once it becomes something that's habitualized, well, then it really does blossom within you, and the children are receiving a role model worthy of being in front of them. And you start to have intuitive realizations through the children, through the teaching which comes from a worthy role model before them. The seeds of inspired wisdom blossoming and bedding through through stories earlier in life, and wisdom. All these things need to be developed as the foundation before you step in front of a class. And ongoing. It's not something that's suddenly reached, it's something that's always being developed. So sort of moving on to the next slide, just looking now at the opposite, the top of the tree. So what is, to some degree observable, and the outcomes of the cultural immersion curriculum. Self-purpose. These are the things that children should leave their schooling lives with. Being free human beings who are able of themselves to impart purpose and direction in their lives. Children with integrity, guided by an inner compass that was developed during their school years, as a cooperation of the teaching, and that teaching connection and relationships with family. So a total all-round growth. Ethical, carrying high ethical practices into all aspects of their life. Having just being able to recite and remember information without these fruits will not deliver the world and future that we need for our children and grandchildren. We want autonomous graduates from the cultural immersion curriculum, the ability to think for themselves and to transfer their ideas into practice. Children who are lifelong learners, appreciate and practice lifelong learning and have a highly developed sense of aesthetics, and driving forward with those three forces of imagination, truth, and responsibility, which is the cornerstone of what it is to be human being, with relationships, how we connect to each other, having lasting value of human bonds, and seek out the opportunities to help others. All of these describe what has been happening on Yidinji territory for tens of thousands of years. So we are bringing these fruits into the modern and contemporary way of teaching children. Just moving on to the next slide. This will give us a bit of an overview of the connection points. So the curriculum connection points that can be embedded within the Yidinji culture. So the Australian Steiner curriculum framework was chosen because it had the highest number of connection points that could be embedded within Yidinji culture. And you can see by this diagram, the highlighted areas display that. We can go through each one of these separately. Move on to the slide for the prep. And so you can see in attempting to describe the Yidinji national curriculum using the perspectives of Australian curriculum standards, it's listed in subjects, history, languages other than English, science, English or language in prep, maths, geography, but it's more so how it's interwoven with each other rather than being all separated out. You can see in the first column there the storytelling, having a story told and connecting that to what we see here listed as science, but without any break between the two. So world rhythms, the story could involve that. It could be done by walking through and in nature and being a part of nature, and experiencing, bringing back to the classroom things which might be used in handcrafts, and observing natural food sources in the environment of the school, in this case on our Yidinji territory, and using them in cooking, and all of these are interwoven as one rhythm, and that continues through all the different class groups. So next one's class 1. Next slide. So once again, same sort of story, rhythm within it. You've got so many different subjects, but they are taught as topics which are moulded into a story, and within that story that might be used at different times, all of the other aspects are brought into it. From the story there can be math, there can be science. To have bushwalking as part of your science, where you experience it, not looking at a textbook, but you're actually experiencing it firsthand. All the senses are enlivened for the children. And the outdoor play, gardening, there's so many Yidinji traditional practices that can be shared during that process that then relate to language. So having traditional language, the whole lesson would be reflected within all the words, the traditional Yidden words that would be learned on this process and shared, because within each class there may be children from many cultures, both from both throughout Australia and from other cultures throughout the world. And so children have got the opportunity to share their languages and experience all the different perspectives from that aspect. And of course, all of this fits in with each and every one of the subject headings. Geography, of course, local country knowledge. So this can be done with the teacher, this can be done with the teacher in support of a traditional custodian of the Yidinji lands, depending on which tribal group and which land school the land's on, the school's on. So class 2, once again, repeated sort of rhythm. So it's just all built on top of each other. As we skip through these, you'll see that they're very similar in that the learning is embedded within the story or the topic or the theme or whatever it is. So there is so many of the aspects of each of the learning age groups and what's correct for that. Because as I said, we've chosen a curriculum that is recognised by ACARA. So the Yidinji national curriculum not only will immerse children in cultural, Yidinji cultural ways and perspectives, but at the same time they will have a much broader and wider learning foundation with all of that knowledge being included in it. So skipping forward to each one from here, so class 3, same thing. So many, as you can see, so many possible points of connection for the Yidinji culture, and for that matter all cultures throughout this country, into the national curriculum framework that's been developed by the Yidinji Department of Education. Fables and legends, traditional languages, all of this fits in very well, and once again always with the geography and the land that the school sits on, all fits in with all through those. So we'll just skip through each one just briefly. So class 4, once again, all those different aspects, language, indigenous legends. So in this case, we've got the Yidinji legends, arts, stories, science. All of this connects to both Yidinji, to nations outside of Yidinji within Australia, and to international cultures throughout the world. Class 5, yeah, fantastic. 6. And so there's the completion of our first full 6 age groups in the Yidinji curriculum. So today it's not only about what the world is in information overload. It's about how we teach our children. And we'll have a look at the next slide, which sort of just gives you a bit of introduction to the approach. So the curriculum approach is based on topics rather than subjects separated out. So it's the synergy of subjects. They're integrated into content areas which can be taught as one or more integrated thematic morning blocks. So these are called main lessons, and these will happen over 3 to 4 weeks with connected review and practice lessons, developing the content throughout the year. So all children are arriving at the same place at the same time. They'll have their learning, and it'll be very diverse in its manner. It'll be necessary for the all content descriptions to be covered. As we said, it's this curriculum that we're embedding in Yidinji perspectives is recognised by ACARA. So all the content descriptions that need to be covered by teachers will happen, but they'll be able to use their professional judgment and, as we mentioned before, freedom concerning the needs of their year group. So the content can be recombined or reallocated into main lessons and practice lessons over the course of the year. So the main lesson format really is, each activity and each main lesson is designed in such a way that it will be of value to the children in the development as human beings. Each is a rich experience which has many senses where are stimulated and in which the child's thinking, feeling and willing are engaged in an appropriate way for their age. And once again, from cultural perspectives, there are certainly different things unfold at different ages. So this multi-sensory approach is used in which all the artistic aspects are integrated into the classroom activities. As a result, each child develops academically, aesthetically and kinesthetically. A true artistic approach always arises out of and leads towards the understanding and realisation of the complete human being. We are not just heads walking around. It's not a matter of just putting information into us, into our children for that matter. It's about developing the whole human being. So out of experience in which the whole being of the child is involved, knowledge and wisdom will develop. And when the children's intellectual and reflective capacities unfold later in their schooling, depending on what age group they're in, once again specific to their appropriate for their age. So the capability of a teacher is not determined by what they know, but who they are as a human being. The Yidinji national curriculum allows each teacher the freedom to deliver their unique talents. So this is one of the greatest complaints that I constantly hear from so many teachers that I meet and talk with, is that they don't have the time to connect with the children. And it's really about allowing and having that freedom to express each teacher's unique talents and connect with each and every child and know them intimately, and then you will find that teaching reaches its highest levels, along with the children enjoying and becoming lifelong learners themselves. So thank you for joining us. We've on your last slide here, you'll see that we have an expression of interest, and it is now available if anybody wants to receive and find out more information. And any questions can also be answered by emailing education@yidinji.org or the CEG@outlook.com. So I hope everybody enjoyed that presentation, and just a very quick and brief overview of the Yidinji National Curriculum. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything that comes through.
One question's come through on the email is how could this benefit children who fall through the gaps in say a mainstream education, but would it deter others that are actually excelling in that same mainstream education?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a great question.
If you want to repeat the question.
All right. Yeah. So just so we're clear on that one, how will it help children that may be falling through the gaps currently in their education, or will it be something that isn't supporting children who are excelling? And of course, we're going to make a huge difference with children that may or may not be falling through the gaps, simply because the relationship will be established. So a time will be allowed for teachers to develop deeper relationships with the children, and that alone will ensure that there is much better progress and less chance of anybody falling through any gaps. And on the flip side, will it hold back children that are excelling? Well, the thing that the Yidinji National Curriculum will present is that it's going to be so much more multifaceted. So you might find that children that are struggling are in fact really successful in other areas of learning that aren't measured currently within the current education they're receiving. And to just be able to recite information and get grades, it only demonstrates a small part of the learning process that needs to be there. So I would say that the children that are excelling at the moment will actually find new and interesting ways of both learning and engaging that will challenge them, and likewise allow all of them to engage with each other and bring everybody along at the same time within the curriculum.
And how does, the other question was, what's the basic level introduction? How does one start this whole process apart from filling out the EOI? Does that mean that you and other Yidinji elders, for example, go to the school and help put that together, or what's the story there?
Yeah, sure. So the question was, what happens if I receive an expression of interest? What happens from there? Currently, I can speak within the Yidinji territory that we have 66 both private and public schools on our territory, and so the expression of interest will be part of that process where we will be talking to each and every school and determining their position of readiness to begin the curriculum. Basically, we're looking, as I said, choosing the first school to start at next January, and so within that process we'll be going to all 66 schools on our territory and basically sitting down and listening to their needs, their positions, where they sit, what they feel they might need support in, and from that set of discussions with all the schools, we'll have a good idea of not only where we're starting, but where we can continue to support all schools so they can commence within that next 7-year period. All right, well, thank you for everybody. That's really great that you could join us today, and thank you for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you.